The shutter clicked, a sharp sound slicing through the quiet park. Ethan's hands trembled as he adjusted the lens, his heart pounding louder than the distant hum of New York City. Across from him, Caleb stood against an oak tree, his blonde hair catching the golden light, oblivious to the storm of emotions threatening to unravel Ethan's carefully guarded secret. They'd known each other since high school. Two misfits in a small upstate town where being different was a quiet crime. Ethan, the shy photographer with a knack for capturing beauty in the mundane, had always been drawn to Caleb's effortless charm, a charm that hid his own struggles. Back then, Caleb was the golden boy, the quarterback who smiled for everyone but cried alone, wrestling with a truth he couldn't name. Ethan saw it all through his lens. Every fleeting glance, every forced laugh, and he kept those moments locked in undeveloped film, too afraid to expose his own heart. Now, at 25, they were in Brooklyn, far from the suffocating expectations of their hometown. Caleb had called Ethan out of the blue, asking for a photo shoot for his new acting portfolio. "You're the best, man," Caleb had said over the phone, his voice warm but distant. Ethan agreed, ignoring the ache in his chest, the one that had started a decade ago when Caleb first smiled at him in art class. He'd spent years convincing himself it was one-sided, that Caleb's easy affection was just friendship. But as Caleb posed now, his blue eyes locking onto Ethan's, something shifted like a crack in a dam, threatening to burst. "Chin up a bit," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the chaos inside. Caleb tilted his head, his lips curving into a half-smile that made Ethan's breath catch. The camera was his shield, a way to see Caleb without being seen, but it couldn't protect him from the truth any longer. He'd loved Caleb for years, silently, fiercely, and every click of the shutter felt like a confession he wasn't ready to make. They moved to a bench, the park's autumn leaves swirling around them. Caleb sat, one leg crossed over the other, his posture relaxed but his eyes searching. "You've gotten good at this," he said, gesturing to the camera. "I always knew you'd make it." Ethan lowered the camera, his fingers brushing the cold metal. "You always believed in me more than I did." His voice was soft, almost lost in the wind. Caleb's gaze lingered, and for a moment, Ethan swore he saw something that mirrored his own longing. But Caleb looked away, running a hand through his hair, and the moment slipped like sand through Ethan's fingers. They'd grown up in a town where different was whispered behind hands, where Ethan's quiet demeanor and Caleb's hidden struggles made them targets. Ethan had escaped through his photography, capturing the world's beauty to drown out the ugliness. Caleb had fought harder, wearing his charm like armor, but Ethan knew the cracks in it. He'd seen Caleb's panic after a teammate's cruel joke, the way his hands shook when his father sneered at those people on the news. Ethan had wanted to reach out then, to tell Caleb he wasn't alone, but fear had chained him. Now, in the city, they were freer, so Ethan thought. Caleb's life as an aspiring actor was a whirlwind of auditions and late-night gigs, but he carried the same guarded look. Ethan wondered if Caleb still felt the weight of their hometown, if he still hid parts of himself. As they walked to a new spot by the pond, Caleb's shoulder brushed Ethan's, and the touch sent a jolt through him. "You okay?" Caleb asked, his voice low, concerned. "Yeah," Ethan lied, adjusting his camera bag. "Just thinking about the old days." Caleb laughed, but it was hollow. Not much to miss there. Huh. Ethan stopped, the words spilling before he could stop them. I miss you. The air stilled, and Caleb's eyes widened. Just for a second, before he masked it with a grin. You see me all the time. Man, Caleb said, but his voice cracked, betraying him. Ethan wanted to push, to ask what Caleb was hiding, but the weight of 10 years of silence held him back. Instead, he raised his camera, framing Caleb against the water's reflection. Pose for me, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Caleb obeyed, but his eyes never left Ethan's. And in that moment, Ethan felt the truth clawing its way to the surface. The shoot continued, each frame a step closer to something Ethan couldn't name. Caleb's poses grew bolder, his smile softer, and Ethan's heart raced with every click. By the time the sun dipped below the skyline, painting the park in hues of orange and pink, Ethan knew he couldn't keep this buried any longer. He lowered the camera, his hands shaking, and took a step closer to Caleb. Ethan. Caleb's voice was tentative, his eyes searching. Ethan swallowed, the words he'd held for years burning in his throat. I need to tell you something, he said, his voice raw. Caleb's breath hitched, and the space between them felt like a tightrope, fragile and trembling. The park was quiet now, the last joggers fading into the dusk. Ethan's words hung in the air, heavy with a decade of unspoken truth. Caleb stood frozen, his blue eyes wide, reflecting the fading light like a storm about to break. I've been waiting to tell you this for years, Ethan said, his voice trembling but resolute. He stepped closer, the camera dangling uselessly at his side. I've loved you since we were kids, Caleb. Not just as a friend. More. Caleb's face paled, his lips parting as if to speak. But no words came. Ethan's heart sank, the silence cutting deeper than any rejection. He'd dreamed of this moment, feared it, and now it was here, raw and unfiltered. Say something, Ethan pleaded, his voice barely a whisper. Caleb ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit Ethan knew too well. Ethan. He stopped, his eyes darting to the ground, then back to Ethan's face. I didn't know. I suspected, but I didn't know. Ethan's chest tightened. You suspected. The words stung, sharper than he expected. All those years, the glances, the moments he thought were shared, had Caleb seen them and said nothing? I was scared, Caleb admitted, his voice low, almost lost in the evening breeze. Back home, you know how it was. My dad, the team, the whole damn town. I couldn't face it. He looked up, his eyes glistening. But I felt it too. Ethan. I always did. The confession hit Ethan like a tidal wave, stealing his breath. He'd spent years building walls, convincing himself Caleb could never feel the same. Now, those walls crumbled, leaving him exposed. Why didn't you say anything? Ethan asked, his voice cracking. Caleb laughed bitterly, stepping closer. Because I was a coward. Because I thought if I admitted it, I'd lose you. You were the only thing keeping me sane back then. His voice softened, and he reached out, his fingers brushing Ethan's arm. I'm sorry. The touch was electric, grounding Ethan in a moment he'd only dreamed of. He wanted to pull Caleb closer, to erase the years of distance. But doubt lingered. What now? Ethan asked, his eyes searching Caleb's. You're here, in New York, living this big life. Where do I fit? Caleb's hand lingered, his thumb tracing a small circle on Ethan's wrist. You fit everywhere, he said, his voice steady now. I've been running from this for years. But I'm tired. Ethan, I'm tired of pretending. The words ignited something in Ethan, a spark of hope he'd long buried. But before he could respond, Caleb's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. Caleb glanced at it, his face tightening. It's my agent, he muttered, stepping back. I have an audition tomorrow. I need to prep. Ethan nodded, swallowing his disappointment. Go? We'll talk later. Caleb hesitated, then nodded. Tomorrow. I promise. He turned to leave, but not before glancing back, his eyes holding a promise Ethan wasn't sure he could trust. The next day, Ethan sat in his small Brooklyn apartment, surrounded by prints of his work cityscapes, strangers, and too many photos of Caleb. He stared at a high school shot, Caleb laughing in the bleachers, unaware of the camera. Ethan had kept it hidden, like his feelings, but now it felt like a lifeline. His phone pinged a text from Caleb. Meet me at the coffee shop on 7th. 3 p.m. Need to talk. Ethan's heart raced, but doubt gnawed at him. What if Caleb was backtracking? What if last night was just a moment of weakness? At the coffee shop, Caleb was already there, nursing a black coffee, his eyes tired but bright. You came, he said, a small smile breaking through. You asked, Ethan replied, sliding into the seat across from him. The air between them was charged, every word a step on thin ice. So, what's this about? Caleb leaned forward, his voice low. I meant what I said last night. But it's not simple. Ethan, my career, my familiarity is still part of me. I need time to figure this out. Ethan's heart sank, but he nodded. I've waited 10 years. I can wait a little longer. Caleb reached across the table, his hand covering Ethan's. I don't want you to wait. I want you now. I just need to be sure I can give you what you deserve. The words were a lifeline, but they came with a weight. Ethan knew Caleb's world editions. Agents. The pressure to be perfect. Could love survive that? He squeezed Caleb's hand, a silent promise to try. They spent the afternoon talking, unraveling years of silence. Caleb admitted he'd questioned his sexuality since high school, hiding it behind girlfriends and football. Ethan shared his own fears, the nights he'd spent wondering if he'd ever be enough. By the time they left, the sun was setting, and Ethan felt lighter, like he'd shed a skin he'd outgrown. But as they walked down 7th Avenue, a man in a baseball cap lingered too long, his phone angled toward them. Ethan's stomach twisted. Paparazzi, or just a nosy stranger? Caleb's face hardened, and he dropped Ethan's hand. We need to be careful, he said, his voice tight. If this gets out before I'm ready. Ethan nodded, but the sting of rejection lingered. He wanted to believe in Caleb's promise, But the world wasn't as kind as their coffee shop bubble. As they parted ways, Ethan wondered if love could thrive in the shadows or if it would demand to be seen. The city hummed around Ethan as he walked home, the weight of Caleb's hand still lingering on his skin. He wanted to trust the spark between them, but Caleb's hesitation at the coffee shop gnawed at him. Could they build something real when Caleb was still half in the closet? His career a fragile house of cards. Back in his apartment, Ethan pored over the photos from the park shoot. Caleb's face filled his screen, every smile, every glance. A story Ethan had memorized but never dared to tell. He paused on one image, Caleb looking directly at the camera. His eyes soft, vulnerable. It was the kind of shot that could break hearts. And it was breaking Ethan's now. He saved the file, naming it Truth, and shut his laptop, unable to face it any longer. The next morning, Caleb texted, "Dinner tonight. My place." Ethan's heart leapt, but doubt followed. Caleb's apartment was a sanctuary, a place where he could be himself. But inviting Ethan there felt like a step into uncharted territory. Ethan replied with a simple sure, but his mind raced with possibilities, hope, fear, and everything in between. Caleb's apartment was a small loft in Williamsburg, cluttered with scripts and headshots, but warm with fairy lights and mismatched furniture. When Ethan arrived, Caleb was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of pasta, his sleeves rolled up. "You cook now?" Ethan teased, trying to ease the tension in his chest. "Trying," Caleb said with a grin, but his eyes were nervous. They ate on the couch, the TV playing softly in the background, a shield against the silence. Halfway through, Caleb set his plate down and turned to Ethan. "I've been thinking about what you said in the park. About loving me." Ethan's fork froze midair. "Yeah." Caleb took a deep breath. "I've loved you too, Ethan. Maybe not as bravely as you, but it's there. It's always been there." He reached for Ethan's hand, his fingers trembling. "But I'm scared. My agent. The industry theory not kind to people like us." Ethan's heart ached, but he squeezed Caleb's hand. "I'm scared too, but I'd rather face it with you than alone." Caleb's eyes softened, and he leaned closer, their foreheads almost touching. "You make it sound so simple." "It's not," Ethan said, his voice raw. "But it's worth it." The air between them crackled, and before Ethan could think, Caleb closed the gap, his lips brushing Ethan's in a tentative, electric kiss. It was soft at first, then desperate, years of longing pouring into a single moment. Ethan's hands found Caleb's face, pulling him closer, and for the first time, the world felt right. But the moment was fleeting. A knock at the door jolted them apart, and Caleb's face paled. "That's probably my neighbor," he said, standing quickly. He borrows stuff all the time. But when he opened the door, it wasn't the neighbor. It was a woman, polished and sharp, her eyes narrowing as she saw Ethan. "Caleb, we need to talk," she said, her voice clipped. "Now." Caleb hesitated, glancing at Ethan. "This is my agent, Laura," he said, his voice tight. "Laura, this is Ethan, my friend." The word stung, but Ethan nodded, standing. "I'll let you two talk." He grabbed his jacket, avoiding Caleb's eyes, and slipped out, the weight of friend crushing him. Outside, the city felt colder, the lights harsher. Ethan walked aimlessly, replaying the kiss, the interruption, the word friend. Had Caleb meant it? Or was it a reflex to protect himself? Ethan's phone buzzed a text from Caleb. "I'm sorry." I panicked. "Please come back tomorrow." Ethan didn't reply. He needed time to process, to untangle the hope from the hurt. The next day, he avoided Caleb's texts, burying himself in editing photos. But the images only reminded him of Caleb's eyes, his touch, the promise of something real. By evening, he couldn't stay away. He went back to Caleb's apartment, heart in his throat. Caleb opened the door, his face a mix of relief and guilt. "I messed up," he said before Ethan could speak. "Laura's pushing me for a big role. And she's not open-minded. I didn't know how to explain us." "Us?" Ethan asked, his voice sharp. "Is there an us, Caleb? Or am I just your friend when it's convenient?" Caleb flinched, but he stepped closer. "You're everything. I just need time to figure out how to do this without losing everything else." Ethan wanted to believe him, but the doubt lingered. They sat on the couch, the silence heavy, and Ethan wondered if love could survive half-truths. As Caleb reached for his hand, Ethan let him. But the question hung between them. How long could they live in the shadows before the light demanded to be seen? Ethan woke to the sound of his phone buzzing, Caleb's name flashing on the screen. It was early. Too early for Caleb's usual late riser habits. "Hey." Caleb's voice was rough. "Urgent. Can you meet me at the studio? I need you." The word need pulled Ethan out of bed, despite the ache from last night's unresolved tension. He arrived at the small photography studio Caleb had rented for a rehearsal, a cramped space filled with props and softboxes. Caleb was pacing, a script clutched in his hand, his face drawn. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked, setting his camera bag down. Caleb stopped, his eyes meeting Ethan's. "Laura got me an audition for a major film. It's huge, Ethan. But they want me to play the perfect straight guy. No scandals. No rumors." His voice cracked. "I don't know if I can keep pretending." Ethan's stomach twisted. He'd always known Caleb's career came with chains, but hearing it laid bare hurt more than he expected. "What are you saying? You're going to hide who you are for this?" Caleb sank onto a stool, his hands shaking. "I don't want to. But this role, it's everything I've worked for. If I come out now, it could ruin it. Laura made that clear." Ethan wanted to scream, to shake Caleb until he saw his own worth. But he saw the fear in Caleb's eyes, the same fear from high school, when a wrong word could mean ostracism. "What about us?" Ethan asked, his voice low. "Where do I fit in this perfect straight guy act?" Caleb stood, closing the distance between them. "You're not an act, Ethan. You're the realest thing in my life." He reached for Ethan's hand, but Ethan pulled back, the hurt too raw. "Then why does it feel like I'm your secret?" Ethan's voice broke, and he turned away, pretending to adjust his camera. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the hum of the studio lights. Caleb stepped closer, his voice soft. "I'm trying. Ethan, I want to be brave for you, but I'm scared. I've spent so long hiding. I don't know how to stop. Ethan turned, meeting Caleb's gaze. I've been hiding too. For years. I kept my feelings locked away because I thought you'd never feel the same. But I'm done hiding. Caleb, I can't do it anymore. Caleb's eyes glistened, and he nodded. Give me a chance to figure this out. Please. Ethan wanted to say no, to protect his heart, but the love he'd carried for a decade wouldn't let him. Okay, he said finally, but I won't wait forever. They spent the day in the studio, Caleb running lines while Ethan snapped photos, each click a reminder of their fragile connection. The tension eased as they worked, falling into an old rhythm. Caleb's laughter filled the space, and Ethan caught it in candid shots, moments of joy that felt like promises. But the outside world crept in. Laura texted Caleb relentlessly, demanding updates on his audition prep. Ethan watched Caleb's face tighten with each message, and the weight of their reality settled back in. When they left the studio, Caleb suggested a walk through Prospect Park, a chance to breathe. The park was alive with spring, cherry blossoms dusting the paths like pink snow. They walked in silence, the distance between them both physical and emotional. Ethan stopped by a pond, his camera raised, capturing the reflection of the trees. You ever think about what life would have been like if we'd stayed in that town? He asked, not looking at Caleb. Caleb sat on a nearby bench, his voice quiet. All the time. I'd probably be married to some girl I didn't love, hating myself. You. Ethan lowered the camera. I'd still be taking pictures, hiding behind them. Probably still in love with you, but too scared to say it. Caleb's laugh was soft, pained. We're a mess, aren't we? Yeah, Ethan said, sitting beside him. But maybe we're the kind of mess that's worth it. Caleb's hand found Ethan's, and this time, Ethan didn't pull away. They sat there, watching the sun dip low, the world fading to a soft blur. For a moment, it was just them, no auditions, no agents, no secrets. But as they stood to leave, a group of teenagers passed, one whispering something to the others, their eyes on Caleb and Ethan's joined hands. Caleb tensed, but he didn't let go. Let them look, he said, his voice steady. Ethan's heart swelled, a small victory in a war they hadn't won yet. But as they walked back to the city, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was coming and neither of them was ready. The next week was a blur of stolen moments and unspoken fears. Ethan and Caleb met when they cootled late-night coffee runs. Quiet walks in the city's hidden corners, but the shadow of Caleb's audition loomed. Ethan tried to focus on his own work, booking small gigs. But his mind was on Caleb, on the fragile hope they were building. One evening, Caleb invited Ethan to a cast party, a rare chance to see his world. The loft in Manhattan was packed with actors, directors, and industry types, all sharp smiles and sharper ambitions. Caleb was in his element, charming everyone. But Ethan saw the strain in his eyes, the way he glanced at Ethan as if anchoring himself. Friend of Caleb's? A woman asked, her tone curious but edged. She was a producer, her name badge gleaming under the lights. Yeah, Ethan said, the word bitter on his tongue. He hated playing the role. But Caleb had asked him to keep things quiet. Just for now. The producer nodded, her eyes lingering too long. And Ethan felt exposed, like a photo left too long in the light. Caleb found him later, pulling him to a quiet corner. "You okay?" he asked, his hand brushing Ethan's arm. Ethan forced a smile. "Just not my scene." Caleb's face fell. "I know this is hard. I'm trying to balance it all. I swear." "I know," Ethan said, but the words felt hollow. He wanted to believe Caleb, but the secrecy was a weight, pressing harder each day. The party dragged on, and Ethan slipped out early, needing air. He wandered the city, his camera a comforting weight around his neck. He snapped shots of strangers, a couple laughing, a busker strumming a guitar searching for beauty to drown out the ache. When he checked his phone, there was a voicemail from Caleb, his voice soft. "Urgent. I'm sorry about tonight. Meet me at the pier tomorrow. I need to see you." The next day, Ethan found Caleb at the Brooklyn Pier, the skyline glittering across the water. Caleb looked tired, his usual charm dimmed. "Laura heard rumors," he said without preamble. "Someone saw us in the park. She's freaking out, saying it could tank my career." Ethan's heart sank. "What did you tell her?" "The truth," Caleb said, his voice steady. "That I love you. That I'm done hiding." Ethan's breath caught, hope warring with fear. "What happens now?" Caleb shrugged, a sad smile on his lips. "I don't know. She's pissed. But I can't keep lying. Not to her. Not to myself." Ethan reached for Caleb's hand, their fingers intertwining. "Whatever happens, we face it together." Caleb nodded, but his eyes were distant, like he was already bracing for the fallout. They walked along the pier, the city's pulse a backdrop to their quiet. Ethan snapped a photo of Caleb, his profile sharp against the water. And for a moment, it felt like they could outrun the world. But the world caught up. The next morning, Ethan woke to a flurry of notifications. A gossip blog had posted a blurry photo of them holding hands at the pier. The headline screaming, "Rising Stars' Secret Romance." Ethan's stomach dropped. He called Caleb, who answered on the first ring, his voice tight. "Laura's handling it. She wants me to deny everything." Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. "And you? What do you want?" "I want you," Caleb said, his voice raw. "But I need to play this smart. Just for now." Ethan hung up, the words echoing. He wanted to believe Caleb, but the secrecy was suffocating. He spent the day in his apartment, avoiding the internet, avoiding Caleb's texts. By evening, he couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed his camera and headed to Caleb's, needing answers. Caleb opened the door, his face pale. "I didn't deny it," he said before Ethan could speak. "I told Laura I'm done pretending. She's not happy, but I can't lose you." Ethan's anger melted, replaced by a fragile hope. He stepped inside, and Caleb pulled him into a hug, his arms trembling. "I'm scared," Caleb whispered, "but I'm more scared of losing you." They stood there, holding each other, the world outside roaring with judgment. Ethan knew the road ahead would be brutal. But in that moment, Caleb's arms felt like home. As they pulled apart, Ethan raised his camera, capturing Caleb's tear-streaked face. "This is us," he said, his voice steady. "No more hiding." Caleb nodded, a small smile breaking through. "No more hiding." The fallout came faster than Ethan expected. By morning, the gossip blog story had spread, picked up by bigger outlets, each headline more sensational than the last. Caleb's phone was a war zone of notifications, angry texts from Laura, concerned messages from friends, and cruel comments from strangers. Ethan watched Caleb scroll through them, his face a mask of resignation. "I'm sorry," Ethan said, sitting across from Caleb in his loft. "I didn't mean for this to happen." Caleb shook his head, his eyes tired but warm. "It's not your fault. I chose this. I chose you." The words were a balm, but they couldn't erase the reality. Laura had called an emergency meeting, demanding Caleb fix the narrative. "She wants me to do an interview," Caleb said, tossing his phone onto the couch. "Say it's all a misunderstanding, that we're just friends." Ethan's heart clenched. "And what did you say?" "I told her no," Caleb said, his voice firm. "I'm done lying. But she's pulling strings to kill the film deal. She says I'm throwing away my career." Ethan reached for Caleb's hand, his own trembling. "You're not throwing anything away. You're choosing to be honest." Caleb's laugh was bitter. "Honest? Yeah. But at what cost?" The question hung between them, unanswered. They spent the day holed up in Caleb's apartment, avoiding the outside world. Ethan edited photos, trying to focus, while Caleb paced, his anxiety a living thing. By evening, Caleb's phone rang again, his mother, her voice sharp through the speaker. "Caleb, what is this nonsense online? You're not like that, are you?" Ethan froze, his eyes on Caleb. The silence stretched, and then Caleb spoke, his voice steady. "I am, Mom. I love Ethan. I've loved him for years." The line went quiet, then clicked off. Caleb stared at the phone, his shoulders slumping. Ethan moved to his side, wrapping an arm around him. "You didn't have to do that," Ethan said softly. "Yeah, I did," Caleb replied, leaning into him. "I'm tired of running." The next day, Caleb's agent dropped him. Laura's email was curt, professional, but the message was clear: Caleb's honesty was a liability. Ethan watched Caleb read it, his face unreadable. "What now?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Caleb shrugged, a spark of defiance in his eyes. "I keep going. There are other roles, other agents, ones who don't care who I love." Ethan admired Caleb's resolve, but he saw the cracks: fear, uncertainty, the weight of a dream slipping away. They decided to get out of the city for a day, driving upstate to a quiet lake they'd visited as kids. The familiar landscape was a comfort, the water still and the air crisp. Ethan set up his camera, capturing Caleb against the backdrop of pines, his smile genuine for the first time in days. "You always look at me like I'm something special," Caleb said, watching Ethan adjust the lens. You are, Ethan replied, his voice soft. He lowered the camera, meeting Caleb's gaze. You're worth all of this. Caleb stepped closer, his hand finding Ethan's. So are you. They kissed by the lake, the world fading to just them. The water, the trees. For a moment, the chaos of the city felt far away. But Ethan knew it was waiting. When they returned to Brooklyn, Caleb's phone was buzzing Ogine, a new agent, a small theater company interested in him. It wasn't Hollywood, but it was a start. Ethan felt a flicker of hope. Maybe they could carve out a life together, one where Caleb didn't have to hide. But as they drove back, a text from an unknown number flashed on Caleb's phone. You'll regret this. Fag. Ethan's blood ran cold, and Caleb's face hardened. Block it, Ethan said, his voice tight. Caleb did. But the damage was done. The world wasn't done with them yet. That night, they lay in bed, holding each other, the silence heavy with unspoken fears. Ethan traced circles on Caleb's back, whispering, We'll get through this. Caleb nodded, but his eyes were distant, like he was bracing for a storm. Ethan clung to him, praying their love was strong enough to weather it. The weeks that followed were a test of endurance. Caleb threw himself into auditions with the theater company, a scrappy group that welcomed him without judgment. Ethan attended every rehearsal, his camera capturing Caleb's transformation on stage, his passion alight in the darkness. But the hate messages kept coming, anonymous texts, comments on Caleb's social media, venom from strangers who didn't know him but hated what he represented. Ethan tried to shield Caleb, but the weight was crushing them both. One night, after a particularly cruel message, Caleb broke down, his head in his hands. Maybe they're right, he whispered. Maybe I'm ruining everything. Ethan knelt before him, his hands on Caleb's knees. They're wrong. You're not ruining anything. You're living your truth. Caleb's eyes were red, but he nodded, pulling Ethan into a fierce hug. I don't know how I'd do this without you. You won't have to, Ethan promised. But the words felt fragile, like glass under pressure. They found solace in small victories. Caleb landed a lead role in the theater company's new play, a queer love story that hit too close to home. Ethan's photos of the rehearsals caught the eye of a local gallery, and they offered him a solo exhibit. For the first time, Ethan felt like his art and his love could exist in the open. The night of Caleb's play was electric. The small theater was packed, the air buzzing with anticipation. Ethan sat in the front row, his camera ready, his heart full. Caleb was radiant on stage, every line dripping with emotion, his eyes finding Ethan's in the crowd. When the curtain fell, the audience roared, and Ethan's chest swelled with pride. Backstage, Caleb pulled Ethan into a corner, kissing him fiercely. That was for you, he said, his voice hoarse. Every word. Ethan grinned, his camera forgotten. You were incredible. But the high didn't last. As they left the theater, a group of men lingered outside, their eyes hard. One spat at Caleb's feet, muttering a slur. Ethan stepped forward, his fists clenched, but Caleb grabbed his arm. Don't, he said, his voice low. They're not worth it. They walked away, But the encounter left a mark. Ethan saw it in Caleb's tightened jaw, the way he checked his phone obsessively, waiting for the next blow. At home, Ethan tried to lighten the mood, showing Caleb the photos from the play. But Caleb's smile was forced. "I'm scared, Ethan," he admitted later, lying in bed. "Not just for me. For you. What if this gets worse?" Ethan took his hand, his voice steady. "Then we face it together. We're stronger than their hate." Caleb nodded, but doubt lingered in his eyes. The next day, Ethan woke to find Caleb gone. A note on the pillow: "Need some space to think. I love you." Panic gripped Ethan, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios. He called Caleb, but it went to voicemail. He paced his apartment, the silence deafening, until a knock at the door startled him. It was Caleb, his eyes red but determined. "I want to see my mom," he said, stepping inside. "I needed to know if she could accept me." Ethan's heart pounded. "And she cried," Caleb said, his voice breaking. "But she hugged me. Said she needs time. But she loves me." Ethan pulled Caleb close, relief flooding him. "You're not alone anymore." Caleb clung to him, his voice a whisper. "I never was. Not with you." They spent the day rebuilding, talking about the Futuria future where they could be themselves, no matter the cost. Ethan showed Caleb the gallery's offer, and Caleb's eyes lit up. "You're going to show the world who you are," he said, pride in his voice. Ethan nodded. "A plan forming. And I'm going to show them us." The gallery exhibit was a month away, and Ethan poured himself into it, selecting photos that told their story: Caleb's laughter, his quiet moments, their stolen glances. He titled the collection Truth, a testament to their journey. Caleb helped, offering notes on the prints, his presence a steady anchor. But the world outside wasn't done with them. The hate messages slowed, but the industry's chill was colder. Caleb's new agent was supportive, but roles were scarce. The stigma of his coming out a silent barrier. Ethan watched Caleb fight for every audition, his resilience a quiet fire. "I'm not giving up," Caleb said one night, his voice fierce. "Not on my dreams. And not on us." Ethan believed him, but the fear lingered. What if love wasn't enough? What if the world's weight was too much? He pushed the thoughts aside, focusing on the exhibit. The gallery was a small space in Chelsea, but it felt like a stage for their truth. Ethan hung each photo with care, Caleb's face a beacon in every frame. The night of the exhibit, the gallery was packed: friends, artists, strangers drawn by the buzz. Caleb stood by Ethan's side, his hand brushing Ethan's. A silent promise. The photos told their story: high school glances, park confessions, the lake's quiet moments. The final piece was the shot from the pier, their hands intertwined. The city a glittering backdrop. Below it, a small plaque read, "Love waits, but it never hides." The crowd's reaction was a mix of awe and whispers. But Ethan didn't care. He saw Caleb smile, the pride in his eyes, and it was enough. A critic approached, praising Ethan's raw emotion, and a theater director offered Caleb a new role. No strings attached. For the first time, the future felt possible. Later, They stood outside the gallery, the city alive around them. Caleb took Ethan's hand. No hesitation. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice soft. "And I'm proud of us." Ethan squeezed his hand, his heart full. "We made it through." Caleb laughed, pulling Ethan close. "We're just getting started." They kissed under the streetlights, the world watching but no longer matching. The photos had told their truth, and the world had listened. It wasn't perfect, hate still lingered. And Caleb's career was a battle, but they were together. Unhidden. Unbreakable. As they walked into the night, Ethan's camera hung at his side. No longer a shield, but a witness. Their love was a story, captured in every frame. And it was one they'd keep writing, no matter what came next. The city pulsed around them, a reminder that they'd found their place not in the shadows, but in the light, where love belonged.